The rope burns on her wrists had stopped bleeding, but Loretta Wynn could still feel them, raw reminders that she was no longer a person, but property. 3 small bodies pressed against her legs on the auction platform, and the auctioneer's voice rang out like a death sentence. "The children will be sold separately." Her scream tore through the Kansas morning. Then a cowboy's voice cut through the chaos. "I'll take them all." Follow this story to the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey goes. The sun hadn't yet burned away the morning mist when Loretta Wynn's world ended for the second time. The first time had been 6 months ago, when she'd lowered her husband Thomas into the cold Kansas earth, his body broken from a logging accident that had stolen him in minutes. The second time was now, standing barefoot on a wooden platform in the center of Lawrence's main square, her 3 children clinging to her tattered skirts like drowning sailors to driftwood. "Lot 47!" The auctioneer's voice cracked through the spring air, sharp as a whip. One adult female, approximately 28 years, good health, skilled in household duties and midwifery. 3 children included, 2 boys, 1 girl. Included. As if Caleb, Molly, and little Eli were nothing more than furniture in an estate sale. Loretta's fingers found Molly's small hand and squeezed. The 5-year-old looked up at her with eyes too knowing for such a young face, eyes that had watched their father die, watched their home get seized, watched their mother's hope drain away like water through cupped hands. "Mama," Molly whispered, "my feet hurt." The platform's rough wood was splintered and hot even in the morning cool. None of them had shoes anymore. Those had been sold 3 weeks ago to pay for bread that had lasted 2 days. "I know, sweet girl." Loretta's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Just a little longer." But she didn't believe her own words. How much longer could this nightmare stretch? They'd been on this platform for nearly an hour while the auctioneer worked through lots of seized property, farm equipment, furniture, livestock, and now people. People whose debts had swallowed them whole. Thomas's debts, specifically. Debts. Loretta hadn't known existed until men in fine suits appeared at her door with papers she couldn't read and numbers that didn't matter because the sum was simple. Everything she had wasn't enough. 7-year-old Caleb stood rigid beside her, his small jaw set in a way that broke her heart. He was trying to be the man of the family now, trying to be brave, but his hand trembled in hers. On her other side, 3-year-old Eli had his face buried in her skirt, thumb in his mouth, a habit she'd been trying to break him of before the world fell apart. The crowd before them was a mix of weathered farmers, stern-faced merchants, and a handful of women whose eyes held either pity or cold calculation. Loretta had learned to tell the difference. Pity was useless. Calculation meant someone was measuring her worth in dollars and work hours. "Now, folks," the auctioneer continued, a portly man named Jessup, who'd known Thomas and still wouldn't meet Loretta's eyes. "This here's a valuable acquisition. Woman's young, strong, experienced in childbed attendance. Saved 3 babies just last winter during the fever. The children stay with me." Loretta's voice rang out clear and sharp, cutting through Jessup's sales pitch. Heads turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. Jessup's face reddened. "Mrs. Wynn, we've discussed this. We've discussed nothing." She pulled her children closer, feeling their small hearts racing against her legs. "You will not separate my family." "Ma'am, the debt requires—" "I don't care what the debt requires." Her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. "They're children, my children. You cannot—" "The children will be sold separately." The new voice came from the side of the platform, a lawyer named Thornton, all sharp angles and sharper words. He stepped forward with a leather portfolio, reading from a document. Per Kansas territorial law regarding debt seizure, dependents may be distributed independently to maximize debt recovery. The boy Caleb has value in farm labor. The girl shows promise in domestic service. The youngest— No. The word tore from Loretta's throat as a sob. "Please, please, I'm begging you. Mama—" Caleb's voice was high and frightened now, the man of the family facade crumbling. "Mama, what's he saying?" She couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. The platform seemed to tilt beneath her feet. $40 for the lot, someone called from the crowd, a farmer she didn't recognize, tobacco-stained beard and calculating eyes. $40, Jessup repeated, relief in his voice at finally getting a bid. Do I hear 50? Wait. Loretta tried to speak, but her voice was lost in the auctioneer's rhythm. $40 going once. They stay together. She was screaming now, dignity abandoned. You cannot take them from me. 45 for the woman alone, another voice, a merchant this time. Don't need the children. The words hit like a physical blow. Molly began to cry, silent tears streaming down her dirty face. Eli's thumb-sucking grew more frantic. $60 for the woman and the girl. This from a woman in a severe black dress, her eyes on Molly with an intensity that made Loretta's skin crawl. The boys can go elsewhere. No! Loretta lunged forward, but Thornton's hand clamped on her shoulder, holding her in place. $60 for the woman and girl, Jessup called. Do I hear? 70 for just the older boy, a new bidder, a rancher from the sound of his voice. Need field hands. Caleb made a sound like a wounded animal. His hand in Loretta's grip was ice cold despite the warming day. Mama, don't let them... His voice broke on a sob. I won't, baby. I won't. But she was lying. She was powerless. She was nothing but property now, and her children were being picked apart like a carcass by vultures. We have 70 for the boy, Jessup announced. 60 for woman and girl. What about the youngest? Too young for work, someone called dismissively. Orphanage, probably. No! Loretta's scream split the morning. No, no, please! She was begging now, all pride gone. Please, someone. Anyone. We'll work. We'll work as hard as you need, just don't separate us. Please, God, don't separate us. But God, it seemed, had stopped listening to Loretta Wynn. 75 for the boy, Jessup called. Going once? I'll give you 80. The rancher again, stepping closer. He was looking at Caleb the way one might examine a horse, checking teeth, muscle, potential years of labor. Caleb's breath came in rapid gasps. Loretta recognized the signs of panic, the same way he'd breathed when Thomas died, when the nightmares came, when the world proved too cruel and too big. $80 going, D. 90 for woman and girl. The woman in black, impatient now. 90 going, Mama! Molly's shriek was pure terror. Mama, I don't want to go. You won't, baby. You won't. Loretta pulled her daughter up into her arms, Molly's legs wrapping around her waist. Nobody's taking you. Ma'am, you need to put the child down. Thornton's voice was cold. You're disrupting the proceedings. Proceedings? Loretta whirled on him, Molly still in her arms, her voice rising to something between a laugh and a scream. You're selling my children like cattle, and you call it proceedings. It's the law, Mrs. Wynn. Damn your law. She was shaking now, rage and terror warring in her chest. Damn all of you. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Others leaned in, hungry for drama. If you don't calm down, I'll have you removed, Thornton warned. The auction will continue without you. The threat landed like he'd meant it to. If she was removed, she wouldn't even be able to see where her children went, wouldn't be able to follow, wouldn't be able to find them. Slowly, with hands that shook so badly she could barely control them, Loretta set Molly back down on the platform. The little girl's wail was a knife to the heart. That's better. Jessup cleared his throat. Now, where were we? 90 for woman and girl. $100. The voice came from the back of the crowd, deep, quiet, but carrying a weight that made everyone turn. Loretta couldn't see who'd spoken through her tears. 100 for which lot? Jessup asked, squinting into the crowd. All of them. The crowd parted like water, and Loretta saw him for the first time. He was tall, taller than Thomas had been, with sun-darkened skin and light hair that fell nearly to his shoulders beneath a worn brown hat. His clothes were working clothes, dusty boots, faded denim, a shirt that had seen too many washings. But there was something in the way he carried himself, the set of his shoulders, the steady way he moved through the crowd, that commanded attention. He reached the platform and looked up at her, and Loretta found herself staring into the palest blue eyes she'd ever seen, eyes the color of winter sky, direct and unreadable. You want to buy all 4? Jessup sounded skeptical. That's considerably more. I know what it is. The cowboy's voice was quiet but firm. $100 for the woman and all 3 children. Together. The word together landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading through the crowd. That's, Jessup fumbled with his papers. That's less than the separate bids would total. It's more than you'll get if you drag this out much longer. The cowboy's eyes hadn't left Loretta's face. Crowd's getting uncomfortable. You'll lose buyers. He wasn't wrong. Several people had already started to drift away, unwilling to watch the ugliness play out any further. The debt amount is $140, Thornton interjected sharply. 100 isn't sufficient. 125. The cowboy pulled out a leather pouch, counted coins onto the platform edge with steady hands. Cash. Right now. No haggling, no waiting for bank transfers. Thornton and Jessup exchanged glances. Cash was king in Kansas territory, especially in these uncertain times. Credit could fail, banks could collapse. But coin? 125 for all 4, Jessup said slowly. That leaves $15 unaccounted for. I'll pay the remaining 15 to the widow directly. The cowboy's voice was steady. As wages for work, honest wages. That's not how this works, Thornton began. That's how it's working today. The cowboy's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Thornton take a step back. You have buyers running away, a woman and children in distress, and a debt that needs settling. I'm offering cash, right now, or we can stand here arguing while your crowd disappears and you end up with nothing. A long moment of silence. Somewhere in the square, a horse whinnied. A child laughed, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Then Jessup nodded slowly. Sold. $125 to... He paused. I don't believe I caught your name, sir. Weston Hale. The cowboy, Weston, placed the coins in Jessup's outstretched hand. Hale Ridge Ranch, about 12 miles south. Loretta's heart was hammering so hard she could barely hear over it. This was happening. This stranger was buying them. All of them. Together. But what did that mean? What did he want? Men didn't spend that kind of money out of kindness. Everyone wanted something. Weston turned to her then, and she saw something in his face that looked almost like gentleness. Ma'am? Can you walk? She realized she was trembling head to toe, barely standing. Molly was crying into her skirts. Caleb stood frozen. Eli had wet himself and didn't seem to notice. Her voice failed her. It's all right. Weston climbed up onto the platform, the first person to stand with her rather than above her since this nightmare began. He moved slowly, carefully, as if approaching a spooked horse. My name is Weston Hale. I have a ranch that needs help. Cooking, cleaning, mending, that sort of thing. Your children can help with light chores, age appropriate. Nothing cruel, nothing improper. You'll have rooms, food, wages, fair wages. Loretta stared at him, searching his face for the lie, for the trap. But his eyes were steady, calm. Why? The word came out as a whisper. Why would you do this? Something flickered across his face, pain maybe, or memory. Because nobody should have their family torn apart, he said quietly. Not if there's something that can be done about it. He held out his hand to her, not demanding, just offering. An invitation, not a command. Loretta looked at that outstretched hand, rough with calluses and honest work, and felt something inside her chest crack open. It might have been hope. It might have been desperation. Maybe there was no difference anymore. She took his hand. His grip was firm but gentle, steadying her as she swayed on her feet. Then he turned to the children. Caleb, is it? He crouched down to the boy's level. I could use someone who knows how to work hard. Think you might be interested in learning about horses? Caleb's eyes widened. Horses? Have a whole string of them back at the ranch. They need feeding, grooming, training. Reckon a smart boy like you could learn quick. The tiniest spark of light appeared in Caleb's face, the first Loretta had seen since Thomas died. Weston turned to Molly next. And you must be Molly. Do you like flowers? Molly sniffled, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Yes, sir. Good. My garden's been neglected something terrible. Could use someone with small hands to help with the herbs and such. Then lastly, he looked down at little Eli, still thumb-sucking, still terrified. Weston didn't say anything, just pulled a small carved wooden horse from his pocket and held it out. Eli stared at it for a long moment, then reached out with one small hand and took it. "Let's get you folks off this platform," Weston said, straightening. "You've stood here long enough." He helped them down one by one. Loretta first, then the children. His hands were steady, his movements calm. When Eli stumbled on the last step, Weston caught him easily and set him on his feet. The crowd was dispersing now, the show over. Loretta saw pity in some faces, approval in others, and cold disapproval in a few. She didn't care. Let them judge. She and her children were still together. "My wagon's just over there." Weston gestured toward a sturdy-looking wagon hitched to 2 horses. "It's about 2 hours to the ranch. You all hungry?" Hungry? The word seemed to come from another lifetime. When had they last eaten? Yesterday? The day before? "Yes, sir," Caleb said, his voice small. "Well, we'll fix that soon enough." Weston started walking toward the wagon, moving slow enough that the children could keep up. "Mrs. Wynne, how long since you've eaten?" "I don't remember." It was the truth. The days had blurred together into a haze of fear and hunger. "Right." Weston's jaw tightened. "Well, that changes today." He helped them into the wagon bed, where blankets were folded neatly in one corner. Loretta sank down onto them, her children clustering around her like chicks around a hen. The blankets were clean, well made, better than anything they'd had in months. Weston climbed into the driver's seat and clicked to the horses. The wagon lurched into motion, and Lawrence Square, with its auction platform and hard-eyed bidders, began to fall away behind them. Loretta sat in the wagon bed, her arms around all 3 children, and tried to process what had just happened. One moment she'd been watching her world end. The next, a stranger had stepped in and changed everything. But why? The question gnawed at her. Men didn't do things without reason. What did Weston Hale really want? As if sensing her thoughts, Weston called back over his shoulder, "I imagine you have questions, ma'am." "Several." Her voice was hoarse. "Fair enough. Ask away." What exactly are you expecting from us?" "Told you. Help around the ranch. Cooking, cleaning, mending, garden work, basic chores. Your boy can help with the horses if he wants, your daughter with the herbs. The little one can just be a little one for a while." "And that's all?" There was a pause. When Weston spoke again, his voice was gentler. "Ma'am, I know what you're asking, and I know you got no reason to trust me. But I'm not that kind of man, never have been. You'll have your own quarters, your own space. Locked door if you want it. This is employment, nothing more, nothing less." Loretta wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. "Why did you buy us?" she asked quietly. "The truth." Another pause. The wagon wheels creaked. A meadowlark sang from a fence post. "Had a sister once," Weston said finally, his voice so quiet she almost missed it. "Sarah. She was younger than me. Sweetest thing you ever saw. Our daddy died when I was 12, she was 9. Our mama did her best, but we had debts. Not as bad as what you faced, but bad enough." He went silent. Loretta waited. "They separated us," he continued, his voice flat now. "Sold me to a ranch hand who needed help, sent Sarah to a family in Missouri who wanted a household girl. I was going to find her soon as I was old enough, soon as I saved enough money." "What happened?" Loretta asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "Cholera. Took her when she was 11. I didn't even know until 3 months after she was gone." His hands tightened on the reins. "I swore that day that if I ever had the means, if I ever saw a family about to be torn apart, I'd do something about it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with old grief. "I'm sorry," Loretta whispered. "Me too." Weston's shoulders were rigid. "But that's why. That's the truth of it. I got the money, you needed help, and those children deserve to stay with their mama. Simple as that." It wasn't simple at all, Loretta thought. Nothing about this was simple. But looking at the set of his shoulders, the way his hands held the reins with quiet competence, she thought maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. "Thank you," she said quietly. For what you did back there. For keeping us together. No thanks needed, ma'am. Just... He glanced back at her, those pale blue eyes meeting hers for a moment. Just get some rest. You're safe now. All of you. Safe. The word felt foreign, dangerous, like believing in it might jinx everything. But Caleb had already curled up against her side, his breathing evening out. Molly's head was in her lap. Even Eli had stopped crying, the wooden horse clutched in one small fist. Loretta let her head fall back against the wagon side and closed her eyes. The sun was warm on her face. The wagon rocked gently. And for the first time in 6 months, she let herself stop fighting. Just for a moment. Just long enough to breathe. The Kansas prairie stretched out around them. Endless sky, waving grass, the promise of horizon. Somewhere ahead was Hale Ridge Ranch. Somewhere ahead was whatever came next. But right now, in this wagon, her children were still hers. They were together. They were breathing. It was enough. It had to be enough. The wagon rolled on. They'd been traveling for about an hour when Weston pulled the wagon to a stop near a small creek. Loretta's eyes snapped open. She hadn't meant to doze, hadn't meant to let her guard down, but the children had fallen into exhausted sleep around her. Easy, Weston said, holding up a hand. Just thought we could use a break. Water the horses, stretch our legs. He climbed down and began unhitching the horses, moving with the easy efficiency of someone who'd done the task 1,000 times. Loretta carefully extracted herself from the tangle of sleeping children and climbed down on shaky legs. The creek was narrow but clear, running over smooth stones. Trees provided dappled shade. It was beautiful in a simple way that made Loretta's chest ache. When had she last noticed beauty? There's a canteen by the seat, Weston said, leading the horses to drink. Help yourself. She found it and drank deeply, the water cool and sweet. She hadn't realized how thirsty she was. The children? Weston asked. Sleeping. Loretta sat down on the grass, her legs simply giving out. They haven't slept well in a long time. Can't imagine they have. Weston finished with the horses and came to sit nearby. Not too close, she noticed, keeping a respectful distance. You either, I'd wager? No. She watched the water flow over the rocks, hypnotic and soothing. Not since Thomas died. Your husband? She nodded. Logging accident. A tree fell wrong. He was gone before the doctor even arrived. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. The words came out more bitter than she'd intended. Sorry doesn't pay debts. No, Weston agreed quietly. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a while. A dragonfly hovered over the water. The horses drank their fill and began cropping grass. Mr. Hale, Loretta began. Weston, just Weston. Weston, then. I need to know what you're expecting. Truly, I need to know what we're walking into. He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the creek. When he spoke, his voice was measured, careful. I have a ranch. It's not huge, but it's mine. About 300 acres, 40 head of cattle, 8 horses, small orchard, good well, decent house. But it's been lonely. I've been managing alone for 3 years now, since my partner moved east. House needs a woman's touch, gardens overgrown, meals or whatever I can throw together. I need help, and you need work. Seemed like a fair trade. What happened to your partner? Loretta asked. Married a woman who didn't much like ranch life. They moved to St. Louis. A wry smile touched his mouth. Can't say I blame her. This life isn't for everyone. And you've been alone since then? Mostly. I hire hands sometimes for roundup, but day to day it's just me. Loretta studied him, this stranger who'd changed her life with $125. He couldn't be more than 30, she thought. Young to own a ranch. Young to be alone. But there was something old in his eyes, the same kind of old she saw in her own mirror lately. You asked what I'm expecting, Weston continued. Here's the truth, plain as I can make it. I need someone to keep house. Cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. Garden work if you're able. Your boy can help with livestock, your girl with lighter chores. Little one can just be little. I'll pay you weekly wages on top of room and board. Not a fortune, but fair. You'll have your own space, your own time. Nobody touches you or the children in any way that's not right. You have my word on that. And if I believe you're lying, Loretta's voice was hard. If I think you're planning something else, then you leave. Weston met her eyes steadily. I'll give you a horse, supplies, enough money to get to the next town. No questions asked. You're not prisoners, Mrs. Wynne. You're employees. Big difference. Employees can quit. Exactly. It sounded too good to be true. In Loretta's experience, things that sounded too good to be true usually were. Why aren't you married? She asked bluntly. Weston blinked, caught off guard. What? You're what, 28? 30? You own land, have money enough to spend $125 on strangers. Most men your age are married with families. Why aren't you? A shadow crossed his face. Was engaged once. Girl named Catherine. She decided ranch life wasn't what she wanted after all. Or maybe it was me that wasn't what she wanted. Hard to say. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was 5 years ago. Plenty of time to get over it. But the set of his jaw said maybe he hadn't. Not entirely. Still, Loretta pressed, you could find someone. Must be unmarried women in the territory. Mrs. Wynne, I'm not looking for a wife. Weston's voice was gentle but firm. I'm looking for help. That's all. If that's not what you need, if you'd rather I take you somewhere else, just say so. But I'm not going to lie to you about my intentions. Loretta searched his face, looking for deceit. But all she saw was a kind of tired honesty. The look of a man who'd learned to be straightforward because anything else was too exhausting. All right, she said finally. All right, I'll work for you. We'll work for you. But if you're lying, if this is something other than what you're saying, it's not. Then I'll take that horse and those supplies and you'll never see us again. Fair enough. Weston stood, brushing grass from his pants. We should get moving. Want to reach the ranch before dark. Loretta rose on unsteady legs. 6 months of poor food and poorer sleep had left her weaker than she'd like to admit. Weston noticed. Here. He held out a cloth-wrapped bundle from the wagon. Meant to give you this earlier. Some bread and cheese. Not much, but it's something. Loretta unwrapped it with shaking hands. The bread was fresh, the cheese good quality. Her stomach cramped at the sight. For the children, too, Weston added. They need it more than any of us. She wanted to argue, wanted to say she could wait. But she was so hungry, and the children were so hungry, and pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. Thank you, she whispered. Just bread and cheese, ma'am. Nothing to thank me for. But it wasn't just bread and cheese. It was the first kindness a stranger had shown her in longer than she could remember. And that was everything. She woke the children gently. They ate in the wagon bed while Weston rehitched the horses, tearing into the food with the desperation of the truly starving. Loretta made herself eat slowly, carefully, knowing her shrunken stomach couldn't handle too much at once. When they were ready, Weston helped them back into the wagon, and they set off again. The afternoon sun slanted golden across the prairie. Meadowlarks sang. The grass rippled like water in the wind. Caleb climbed up to sit near Weston, asking questions about the horses, about the ranch, about everything. Weston answered patiently, his voice low and calm. Molly played with the wooden horse Weston had given Eli, making it gallop across her knee. Eli dozed, thumb in mouth, finally peaceful. Loretta watched Weston's back as he drove, the easy set of his shoulders, the gentle way he answered Caleb's endless questions. This man was a stranger. This man had bought them like property. This man held their lives in his hands, but he'd kept them together. That had to count for something, didn't it? The sun was touching the horizon when Weston pointed ahead. There, Hale Ridge. Loretta looked and saw it. A sturdy 2-story house of weathered wood, a barn, several outbuildings, corrals with horses grazing peacefully. Trees surrounded it, cottonwoods and oaks, providing shade and windbreak. Smoke curled from the chimney as if the house itself was breathing. It looked like a home. The thought brought unexpected tears to Loretta's eyes. Home. She'd lost that word along with everything else, but looking at Hale Ridge in the golden evening light, she felt something stir in her chest, something fragile and dangerous that might have been hope. The wagon rolled through the gate and stopped in front of the house. Weston climbed down and began unhitching the horses again, his movements practiced and smooth. "Welcome to Hale Ridge," he said quietly. "Welcome home. Home." Loretta helped her children down from the wagon and stood in the dusty yard, looking at the house that might, just might, be their salvation. Or their doom. Only time would tell. But for now, for this moment, they were together. They were safe. They were home. And that, Loretta thought, as she felt Molly's small hand slip into hers, was more than she'd had any right to hope for when she'd stood on that auction platform this morning. So much more. The sun set behind Hale Ridge Ranch, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and Loretta Wynne, for the first time in 6 months, allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the dawn might bring something better than sorrow. Just maybe. The house was larger than Loretta had expected, with wide windows that caught the last rays of sunlight and a porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Weston led them up the steps, the wood creaking softly under their feet, and pushed open the front door. "It's not much," he said, stepping aside to let them enter first, "but it's solid." Loretta crossed the threshold and stopped, her breath catching. The main room was spacious, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall and comfortable furniture arranged in a way that spoke of care rather than mere function. The floors were wood, worn smooth by years of use but clean. Books lined shelves near the fireplace. A piano stood in the corner, its dark wood gleaming in the dying light. "You have a piano," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. Weston's expression softened. "My mother's. Only thing I kept when she passed. Do you play?" I used to. Before everything fell apart," she meant. "Before Thomas died and the world turned cruel." "Well, it's there if you want it." He moved past her into the room, lighting lamps that pushed back the gathering darkness. "Kitchen's through here. 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 down here that I use. Figured you and the children could take the upstairs." Caleb and Molly stood close to Loretta, their eyes wide as they took in their surroundings. Eli had fallen asleep again in her arms, his small body heavy with exhaustion. "Come on," Weston said gently. "Let me show you the rest." He led them through the house with quiet pride, pointing out the kitchen with its large wood stove and pump that brought well water right to the sink, the pantry stocked with provisions, the dining table that could seat 8. Everything was clean but lived in, cared for but clearly maintained by a single person doing his best. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms opened off a central hallway. The largest had a double bed with a patchwork quilt, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the prairie. "This was my parents' room," Weston said. "Thought you might want it, Mrs. Wynne. The 2 smaller rooms could be for the children, or they could share one and you could use the other for, well, whatever you need." Loretta set Eli down on the bed carefully. The little boy didn't wake, just curled into a ball on the quilt. She ran her hand over the fabric, feeling the careful stitches, the love that had gone into making it. "This is too much," she said quietly. "It's just rooms that aren't being used." Weston leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. "Seems a waste to leave them empty." "Mr. Hale, Weston, I don't know how to... I can't..." "You don't have to say anything, ma'am. Just get settled. Get some rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to figure out the details." But Loretta couldn't let it go. "Why are you being so kind to us? And don't tell me it's just because you need help. You could have hired anyone. Why us?" Weston was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Because I remember what it feels like to be powerless, to watch something precious being taken away and not be able to stop it. I told you about my sister Sarah. What I didn't tell you was that I tried to fight them when they separated us. I was 12 years old and I hit a grown man who was dragging her away. You know what he did?" Loretta shook her head. "He laughed. Then he hit me back hard enough to knock me down, and he told me that's what happens to boys who don't know their place. I laid in the dirt and watched them take my sister, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it." His jaw tightened. "I swore I'd never be that powerless again. And I swore that if I ever saw someone else in that position, I'd do something. So that's what I did today. I did something." The raw honesty in his voice made Loretta's throat tighten. "I'm sorry that happened to you. ancient history now. But the pain in his eyes said it wasn't, not really. Point is, you and your children needed help. I was in a position to give it, simple as that. Nothing about this is simple. No, he admitted. I suppose it's not. Caleb tugged on Loretta's skirt. Mama, is this really where we're going to live? She looked down at her son, at the hope and fear warring in his young face. For now, yes. Do I really get to work with the horses? Weston crouched down to Caleb's level. If you want to, but only if you want to. Nobody's going to force you to do anything here, Caleb. That's a promise. I want to, Caleb said quickly. I really want to. Then tomorrow, after you've rested, I'll introduce you to the horses. We'll start with the gentle ones, let you get comfortable. Sound good? Caleb's smile was the first real one Loretta had seen from him in months. Yes, sir. Molly, braver now, stepped forward. And I can help with the garden? Absolutely. Gardens out back, gets good sun. Herbs need tending, flowers need weeding. Could use someone with a careful touch. I have a careful touch, Molly said seriously. Mama says so. Then you're exactly who I need. Weston straightened, his expression gentle. Now, I bet you're all hungry for more than bread and cheese. How about I make us some supper? You cook? The words slipped out before Loretta could stop them. Weston's laugh was low and warm. Well, I haven't starved yet, though that's more stubbornness than skill. But I can manage bacon and eggs, biscuits if I'm feeling ambitious. It's not fancy, but it'll fill your bellies. I can cook, Loretta said quickly. That's part of what you hired me for, isn't it? I should... Mrs. Wynne. Weston's voice was firm but kind. You stood on an auction block this morning. You've been living God knows how, eating God knows what. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the work. Tonight, you just be. The kindness in his words nearly undid her. She felt tears prickling at her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. Thank you, she managed. Nothing to thank me for. Now, you three get settled up here. Wash up if you want. There's a basin and pitcher in each room, fresh water in the kitchen. I'll call you when supper's ready. He left, his boots heavy on the stairs. Loretta sank down onto the bed beside Eli, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Caleb and Molly climbed up beside her, and for a moment they just sat there, the three conscious members of their fractured family, trying to comprehend the turn their lives had taken. Mama? Molly whispered. Is he a good man? I don't know, sweet girl. I hope so. He gave me a horse. Molly held up the carved wooden toy that Weston had given Eli. Well, he gave it to Eli, but Eli let me play with it. That was nice of him. It was. And he didn't yell, Caleb added. Even when everyone was bidding and you were scared, he didn't yell. Just talked normal. I noticed that too. Papa used to yell sometimes, Caleb said quietly, when he was worried about money. He didn't mean it mean, but he yelled. Loretta pulled her son close. Your papa loved you very much. He was just scared sometimes. We all are. Are you scared now, Mama? Honesty warred with the desire to protect them from more fear. Honesty won. Yes, but maybe a different kind of scared. Not the same as this morning. What kind of scared? Scared that this might be too good to be true. Scared that something will go wrong, but also, she paused, searching for words, also hopeful, and I haven't felt hopeful in a very long time. They sat together in the dimming room as the last light faded from the windows. Below them, Loretta could hear Weston moving around the kitchen, the clink of pans and the crackle of fire being built in the stove. Normal sounds. Home sounds. Come on, she said finally. Let's wash up before supper. They found the basin and pitcher exactly where Weston had said, filled with fresh water that smelled faintly of minerals from the well. Loretta washed her children's faces and hands gently, tenderly, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time in weeks. Caleb had grown thinner, his cheeks hollow. Molly's hair was a tangled mess that would take hours to comb out properly. Eli's little body was all sharp angles and fragile bones. They looked like what they were, children who'd been through hell and somehow survived. But they were here now. They were safe. They were together. She washed her own face last, catching a glimpse of herself in the small mirror above the dresser. The woman staring back looked like a stranger, gaunt, hollow-eyed, aged beyond her years. When had she gotten so old? She was only 28, but the face in the mirror could have been 40. "Mama, you're pretty," Molly said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "Oh, sweet girl, I'm a mess." "No," Molly insisted. "You're pretty. You're the prettiest mama." Loretta gathered her daughter into her arms and held on tight, breathing in the little girl's smell of her, grateful beyond words for this fierce, loving child. "Supper's ready," Weston's voice drifted up the stairs. They made their way down carefully, Loretta carrying Eli, who'd woken confused and cranky. The kitchen was warm and bright, the table set with mismatched plates and solid utensils. Weston stood at the stove, transferring bacon and eggs onto platters with the careful concentration of someone who didn't cook often, but was determined to do it right. "Biscuits are in the oven," he said without turning. "Should be ready in a minute. Sit down, please. Make yourselves comfortable." Loretta settled the children at the table and sat down herself, feeling strangely formal. This was her employer, she reminded herself. This was the man who'd bought her labor for room, board, and $15 still owed. This wasn't charity. This was business. But it didn't feel like business when Weston set the platters on the table and smiled at Molly's wide-eyed wonder at the amount of food. "Dig in," he said. "There's plenty." The children needed no second invitation. They fell on the food with desperate hunger, and Loretta had to remind them to slow down, to chew properly, to not make themselves sick. Weston watched them with something like sadness in his eyes. "When did they last have a full meal?" he asked quietly. "I don't remember. Weeks, maybe. I was selling everything we had for bread and milk. Toward the end, there wasn't even that." "Jesus." Weston's voice was rough. He stood abruptly and pulled the biscuits from the oven, setting them on the table. "Well, that changes now. From now on, 3 meals a day. More if they're hungry. Mr. Hell, I can't let you, Yes, you can. They're children, Mrs. Wynne. Children need to eat." He sat back down, his expression fierce. "And for God's sake, call me Weston. Mr. Hale makes me feel like my father." "All right, Weston. But only if you stop calling me Mrs. Wynne. It's Loretta." Something shifted in his expression, softened. "Loretta, that's a good name." "It was my grandmother's. She'd be proud of you." "I don't know about that." Loretta forced herself to eat, though her stomach had shrunk so much that even a small portion felt like too much. "I let my children nearly starve. I let us end up on an auction block. I don't think there's much to be proud of." "You kept them alive." Weston's voice was steady. "You kept them together as long as you could. You stood up there and begged for them when most people would have just given up. That takes strength, Loretta. Real strength." She had no answer to that, so she focused on her plate, on the miracle of hot food and full bellies. Around her, her children ate with the single-minded intensity of the truly hungry, and she felt her heart crack open a little more. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of this." "You're welcome. But Loretta, you don't have to keep thanking me. This isn't charity. You're going to work for this. You're going to earn every bit of it." "I will, I promise. I'll work harder than anyone you've ever—" "I don't doubt it. But maybe we start with just getting through tonight, Rest of it can wait for tomorrow." They finished the meal in companionable silence, broken only by the children's chatter as they grew more comfortable. Caleb asked questions about the ranch, about the horses, about everything. Molly wanted to know about the garden, about what grew there, about whether there were flowers. Even Eli, shy and quiet, warmed enough to ask if there were cats. 3 barn cats, Weston told him. Orange one's named Rusty. The black and white one is Patches, and the gray one doesn't have a name yet. Maybe you could help me think of one?" Eli's eyes went wide with wonder. "Really? Really? Cats need good names. Can't just go around being nameless their whole lives." "I could name her Smokey," Eli offered, "because she's gray like smoke." "Smokey's perfect. Consider her officially named." The smile that spread across Eli's face was pure sunshine. Loretta felt tears prick her eyes again and blinked them back. How long since her children had smiled like this? How long since they'd had anything to smile about? After supper, Weston helped clear the dishes over Loretta's protests. "You cooked? I'll clean. That's the rule when I'm cooking," which, Fair warning isn't very often, so you might want to take advantage. Tomorrow I'll cook, Loretta said firmly, and I'll do it properly. Looking forward to it. My biscuits are passable at best. He pumped water into the sink and began washing plates with the efficient movements of a man used to doing for himself. In the meantime, why don't you get the children settled for bed? There are quilts in the closet upstairs if you need more blankets. Loretta gathered her exhausted children and herded them back upstairs. She found the quilts exactly where Weston had said, beautiful handmade things that spoke of care and time and skill. She made up beds for Caleb and Molly in the two smaller rooms, though both children insisted on staying with her at first. Just for tonight, she agreed, too tired to argue. Tomorrow you can sleep in your own rooms. She tucked them into the big bed together, all three of them, the way they'd slept during the worst nights after Thomas died. They fell asleep almost instantly, their small bodies finally relaxing into the safety of full bellies and soft mattresses. Loretta sat on the edge of the bed and watched them sleep, these three miracles she'd somehow kept alive. In the lamplight, they looked peaceful, young, like children should look. Downstairs, she could hear Weston moving around, the sound of dishes being put away, the stove being banked for the night. Normal sounds, safe sounds. She should go down, she thought. Should thank him again, should ask about tomorrow's duties, should establish the boundaries of this strange new arrangement. But exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight, and the bed was soft, and her children were warm beside her. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow would be soon enough for everything else. She blew out the lamp and lay down carefully beside her children, feeling their small bodies shift closer to hers in sleep. Through the window, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, bright and clear in a way they never were in town. Loretta closed her eyes and let herself drift, suspended between waking and sleeping, between the nightmare of the morning and the uncertain promise of tomorrow. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked steadily. Outside, a horse whinnied softly. The sounds of life, of normalcy, of home. She was nearly asleep when she heard it, soft music drifting up from downstairs. Piano music, gentle and melancholy, played with a skill that spoke of real training. The melody was unfamiliar but beautiful, sad in a way that felt honest rather than self-pitying. Loretta slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake the children, and padded to the doorway. From the top of the stairs, she could see into the parlor where Weston sat at the piano, his back to her, his hands moving over the keys with surprising grace. His head was bowed, his whole body focused on the music in a way that made him seem almost vulnerable. She watched him play, this stranger who'd bought her family and brought them home, and tried to reconcile the hard-handed rancher with the gentleman at the piano. He'd said the instrument had been his mother's. Had she taught him? Had he learned as a child before life turned hard and sisters were taken and hearts were broken? The music shifted, became something lighter, almost hopeful. Weston's shoulders relaxed slightly, and Loretta realized he was playing for himself, for the pure pleasure of it. This was his time, his privacy, and she was intruding. She started to turn away when a floorboard creaked under her foot. Weston's hand stilled on the keys and he turned to look up at her. "Sorry," Loretta said quickly. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I just heard the music and—" "You're not disturbing me," Weston gestured to the parlor. "Children asleep?" "Yes. All three of them, together in the big bed." "That's fine. Whatever makes them comfortable." He turned back to the piano, running one hand over the keys without pressing them. "I should have asked before playing. Probably woke you." "No, I wasn't asleep yet. It's beautiful. The music, I mean. You play beautifully." "My mother's doing. She insisted I learn, said a man should have more to him than just rope and leather." A slight smile touched his mouth. "Drove my father crazy, but Mother could be stubborn when she wanted something." "Was she a good woman?" "The best. Died when I was 16. Pneumonia took her in 3 days." His fingers ghosted over the keys again. "I think she would have liked you." Loretta came down the stairs slowly, drawn by something she couldn't name. "You don't know me. I know you fought for your children when most people would have given up. I know you stood up there and begged when you could have stayed silent. I know you're scared, but you're still here, still trying." He looked at her then, those pale blue eyes direct and honest. Mother would have respected that. "I didn't have a choice." There's always a choice. You could have run, could have left them, could have saved yourself, but you didn't. That says something about who you are. Loretta wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the house. I don't feel very brave. Brave people usually don't. Weston stood, closing the piano carefully. It's late. You should rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. What happens tomorrow? We figure out how this works. I'll show you around the ranch properly, introduce you to the routine. You'll start cooking if you're up to it. Start getting familiar with where things are. Children can explore a bit, get comfortable. Nothing too strenuous. And my wages? $15 a month plus room and board for all of you, paid on the first of each month. We can adjust if that's not fair. $15. It wasn't a fortune, but it was more than Loretta had seen in months. Combined with room and board, it meant security. It meant her children wouldn't go hungry. That's more than fair, she said quietly. Good. Then we have a deal. Weston extended his hand, formal and businesslike. Loretta took it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. We have a deal. They stood like that for a moment, hands clasped, and Loretta felt something shift in the air between them. Not romantic, not yet, but something. Recognition, maybe. Two people who'd been through darkness and somehow survived. Two people trying to build something better from the ruins. Good night, Loretta. Good night, Weston. She went back upstairs to her children, to the bed that was soft and clean and safe. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly across the Kansas sky. Inside, the house settled around them with creaks and sighs, the sounds of a place lived in and loved. Loretta pulled the quilt up over her shoulders and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring challenges, she knew. Tomorrow would bring hard work and uncertainty and all the complications of this strange new arrangement. But tonight, her children were fed and warm and sleeping peacefully. Tonight, they had a roof over their heads and a man who seemed, against all odds, to be genuinely kind. Tonight was enough. She drifted toward sleep with the memory of piano music still echoing in her ears, beautiful and sad, and strangely hopeful all at once. And in that space between waking and dreaming, Loretta allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be all right. The last thing she heard before sleep claimed her was Weston's footsteps on the stairs, the soft click of his bedroom door closing, and then silence. Safe silence. Home silence. The kind of silence that meant they'd survived another day and would wake to face another tomorrow. Together. Morning came gently to Hale Ridge with sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of roosters crowing in the distance. Loretta woke disoriented, forgetting for a moment where she was. Then she felt the soft mattress beneath her, saw her children still sleeping peacefully beside her, and remembered. They were safe. They were here. They were home. She slipped out of bed carefully and made her way downstairs, following the smell of coffee. She found Weston in the kitchen, already dressed and clearly preparing to head out for the day's work. "Morning," he said, looking up with a slight smile. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." "Thank you." Loretta poured herself a cup, savoring the rich smell. Real coffee, not the chicory substitute they'd been drinking toward the end. "You're up early." "Cattle don't feed themselves, but I left things ready for you in the pantry. Flour, eggs, bacon, whatever you need for breakfast. Take your time. Let the children sleep. They need it." "What time do you want breakfast?" "Whenever you can manage it. I'll grab something quick now and come back around 8 or so." "That give you enough time?" "More than enough." Loretta set down her cup, feeling the need to establish her role clearly. "Weston, I need to know the routine. When you want meals, what you expect done each day, how you like things managed. I can't do my job properly if I don't know what you need." He considered this, leaning against the counter. "All right, fair point. Normally I'm up around 5, out checking the animals by 5:30. Breakfast whenever it's ready. 7 or 8 suits me fine. Midday meal I usually skip or just grab something cold. Supper around 6. As for the rest," he gestured around the kitchen. "House needs cleaning, obviously. Haven't done more than basic tidying in months. Garden needs serious attention. Mending piles up. Cooking's the main thing. Beyond that, you manage it however makes sense to you." "And the children?" Let them be children. Caleb can help me with the horses if he wants, but only if he wants. No pressure. Same with Molly and the garden. They've been through enough. They don't need more burdens. Loretta studied him, this man who kept surprising her with his gentleness. You really mean that? I do. They're kids, Loretta. They should get to be kids while they still can. He finished his coffee and set the cup in the sink. I'll be back around 8. No rush on breakfast. Whenever you're ready is fine. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Loretta? Welcome to your first day at Hale Ridge. Hope it's a good one. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Loretta alone in the quiet kitchen with the morning sun streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee filling the air. She stood there for a moment, just breathing, just being. Then she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. There was a life to build here, a family to feed, a future to fight for. And for the first time in 6 long months, Loretta Wynne felt ready to face it. By the time Weston returned at 8, the kitchen smelled of fresh biscuits, frying bacon, and eggs cooked the way Thomas had always liked them, soft in the center with crispy edges. Loretta had found everything she needed in the well-stocked pantry, and though her hands had trembled at first from nerves and weakness, muscle memory had taken over. Cooking was something she knew, something she could do well, and there was comfort in that certainty. The children were awake now, washed and dressed in the same worn clothes from yesterday. Loretta made a mental note to ask about fabric and thread. They needed new things desperately, but that conversation could wait until she'd proven her worth. Weston came through the door with dirt on his boots and hay in his hair, looking pleasantly surprised. Something smells incredible. Just breakfast, Loretta said, trying to keep her voice casual even as her heart hammered with the need to impress him. Nothing fancy. Fancier than what I usually manage. He washed his hands at the pump and sat down at the table where Caleb was already waiting, barely containing his excitement. Morning, Caleb. Sleep well? Yes, sir. Mama said after breakfast maybe I could see the horses. Absolutely. Been looking forward to it myself. Weston looked over at Molly, who was helping Loretta set the table with careful precision. And Miss Molly, I thought maybe you and I could take a walk to the garden after your brother gets settled with the horses. See what needs doing. Molly's face lit up. Really? Really? Fair's fair. Caleb gets horses, you get flowers. Eli, still shy, peeked out from behind Loretta's skirts. Weston caught his eye and smiled. And you, young man, have the very important job of meeting the barn cats, especially Smokey. She'll want to know who gave her such a fine name. Eli's thumb came out of his mouth long enough for him to whisper, Okay. Loretta set the plates on the table, heaping portions of eggs, bacon, and biscuits with butter and jam she'd found in the pantry. Weston's eyebrows rose. Loretta, you didn't have to go to so much trouble. It's not trouble. It's my job. She sat down with her own smaller portion, conscious of her still sensitive stomach. Besides, you said 3 meals a day. I intend to make sure they're good ones. Weston took a bite of biscuit and closed his eyes briefly. Lord have mercy. Where did you learn to cook like this? My mother. She ran a boarding house in Missouri before she married my father. Said any woman worth her salt should be able to feed people properly. Loretta felt a flush of pride despite herself. These are just biscuits. These are not just biscuits. These are possibly the best biscuits I've ever eaten, and I'm including my own mother's in that assessment. He took another bite, savoring it. You're going to spoil me for my own cooking, you know that? Good. Then maybe you'll keep us around. The words came out before Loretta could stop them. Too honest, too vulnerable. Weston's expression softened. Loretta, I bought you out of that auction. I'm not planning on changing my mind because of biscuits, good or otherwise. You're here as long as you want to be here. That's a promise. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been shattered too many times. Thank you, she said quietly, focusing on her plate. They ate in companionable silence, broken only by the children's excited chatter and Weston's patient answers to Caleb's endless questions about ranch life. Loretta watched him interact with her son, never condescending, never impatient, treating the boy's curiosity with the same seriousness he'd given adult. Thomas had loved Caleb, but he'd often been too tired or too worried about money to really listen. Weston listened to every word. After breakfast, Weston stood and stretched. "All right, Caleb, ready to meet some horses?" Caleb nearly knocked over his chair in his eagerness. "Yes, sir! Bring your sister and brother, too. Might as well show everyone around at once." They all trooped outside into the bright morning sunshine. The ranch looked different in daylight, bigger, more real. Loretta could see the full extent of it now. The house and barn, the corrals with horses grazing peacefully, the chicken coop where hens scratched in the dirt, the garden plot that was indeed overgrown and neglected, and beyond it all the prairie stretching to the horizon in waves of green and gold. It was beautiful in a stark, honest way that made Loretta's chest ache. This was what Thomas had always wanted: land, space, freedom. But he'd never gotten it. He'd died in debt, and his family had nearly been destroyed because of it. "You all right?" Weston's voice was quiet, meant only for her. "Just thinking." "About your husband?" "About what he would have thought of all this." She gestured at the ranch. "He always wanted land of his own. Never got the chance." "I'm sorry for that." "Truly." Weston paused, then added carefully, "But he'd be glad you and the children are safe now. I have to believe that." "I hope so." Loretta blinked back tears. "I really hope so." Weston led them to the corral where 3 horses stood watching their approach with calm interest. "These are the gentle ones," he explained to Caleb. "The bay mare is Daisy. She's the oldest, sweet as pie, but getting on in years. The gray gelding is Silver, about 10 years old, good for riding, and the chestnut is Copper. He's young, only 4, still learning, but willing." Caleb's eyes were huge. "Can I touch them?" "Absolutely. Come here." Weston climbed the fence and held out his hand to help Caleb up. "Move slow, speak soft. Horses are prey animals. Sudden movements scare them. You want to be calm and confident." Loretta watched her son climb into the corral with her heart in her throat, but Weston kept one hand on Caleb's shoulder, guiding him carefully toward Daisy. The old mare lowered her head and snuffled at Caleb's outstretched hand, and the boy's laugh was pure joy. "She likes me." "She does. See how her ears are forward? That means she's interested, curious. If they go back flat, that means she's upset. But Daisy here? She's just a gentle old girl who likes attention." Weston showed Caleb how to stroke the mare's neck, how to speak to her in low, soothing tones. Molly watched from the fence, fascinated, while Eli stayed close to Loretta's side. "Want to try feeding her?" Weston pulled a carrot from his pocket. "Hold your hand flat like this so she doesn't accidentally get your fingers." Caleb took the carrot with shaking hands and offered it to Daisy. The mare took it delicately, crunching with obvious pleasure, and Caleb's face split into the widest smile Loretta had seen since before Thomas died. "Mama, did you see? I fed her! I fed a horse!" "I saw, sweetheart. You were very brave." "Not brave," Caleb said seriously. "Weston says horses smell fear, so I just wasn't scared." "Smart thinking." Weston ruffled the boy's hair. "You're a natural. Few more days and you'll be helping me with all of them." They spent an hour in the corral with Caleb learning to brush Daisy under Weston's patient instruction, while Molly eventually worked up the courage to pet Silver's soft nose. Even Eli ventured close enough to touch Copper's mane, though he stayed safely behind Loretta the entire time. When they finally left the horses, Weston led Molly to the garden while Caleb ran off to find the barn cats with strict instructions to be gentle. Loretta followed Weston and Molly, carrying Eli on her hip. The garden was indeed a mess, weeds choking out what had once been neat rows, herbs growing wild and untended, flowers strangled by aggressive grass. But underneath the neglect, Loretta could see the bones of something beautiful. Someone had planned this garden with care, had chosen plants that would thrive in Kansas soil, had built raised beds and stone pathways. "My mother's work," Weston said, following her gaze. "She loved this garden, spent hours out here. After she died, I kept it up for a while, but then—" He trailed off, gesturing at the overgrown mess. "Life got busy. I told myself I'd get to it eventually. Eventually, never came." Molly was already kneeling by the nearest bed, her small fingers gentle on the leaves of what looked like sage. "It's still pretty, just sleepy." "Sleepy?" Weston smiled. "Mama says gardens get sleepy when nobody tends them. They're not dead, just waiting for someone to wake them up again. Your mama's a wise woman. Weston crouched beside Molly. Think you could help wake this one up? I think so, if you show me what to pull and what to keep. Deal. We'll start tomorrow. Take it slow. No rush. Loretta watched her daughter run careful hands over the plants, already categorizing, already planning, and felt a surge of pride. Molly had always loved growing things, had tended their tiny window box garden in town with fierce dedication. Here, she'd have space to really flourish. They spent the rest of the morning exploring the ranch. Weston showed them the chicken coop where 24 hens roosted, the spring house where milk and butter stayed cool, the woodshed stacked high with split logs, the workshop where tools hung in neat rows. Everything was well maintained despite being managed by one person. Weston clearly took pride in his work, in keeping things in good order. By midday, the children were exhausted from excitement and exploration. Loretta settled them in the parlor with books she found on Weston's shelves, simple readers that Caleb could manage, and picture books for Molly and Eli. Then she returned to the kitchen to prepare the midday meal. Weston had said he usually skipped it, but that was going to change. A man working as hard as he did needed proper food. She put together a simple stew using vegetables from the cellar and salt pork from the pantry, set it to simmer, then started on the mountain of dishes that had accumulated. She was elbow-deep in dishwater when Weston appeared in the doorway. I said you didn't need to make midday dinner. And I'm making it anyway. You work too hard to skip meals. Loretta, Weston. She turned to face him, her hands dripping. Let me do my job, please. I need to earn this, all of this. I need to know I'm pulling my weight. Understanding crossed his face. All right, but you're here feeding yourself too, understood? Not just me and the children. You're thin as a rail. I'm eating. Not enough. I saw your portion at breakfast. He leaned against the doorframe, his voice gentle but firm. I need you healthy, Loretta. Can't run this place if you collapse from hunger. I won't collapse. Promise me you'll eat properly, same portions as everyone else. It was easier to agree than to argue. I promise. Good. He pushed off from the doorframe. I've got to check the fence line in the south pasture. Should be back by 3 or so. Don't wait on supper for me if I'm late. I'll keep it warm. He nodded and left, and Loretta returned to her dishes, her mind churning. This strange dance they were doing, employer and employee, but something more too. Something she couldn't quite name. Weston was kind, but she'd known kind men who turned cruel when they thought they owned you. She'd known men who smiled and lied in the same breath. But something about Weston felt different. The way he looked at her children with genuine affection. The way he'd given her that locked door upstairs without her even asking. The way he listened when she spoke, as if her words mattered. She wanted to trust him, wanted it so badly it frightened her. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Loretta rose early, prepared breakfast, cleaned the house from top to bottom, cooked 3 solid meals a day. Weston worked the ranch from dawn to dusk, patient and steady, never raising his voice, never demanding more than was reasonable. The children thrived. Caleb spent hours with the horses, learning to groom and feed them, his small shoulders growing stronger with each passing day. Molly worked in the garden, her careful hands coaxing life back into the neglected beds. Even Eli came out of his shell, spending his days following Smokey the cat around and helping Loretta with simple tasks like gathering eggs. 2 weeks passed, then 3, and slowly, so slowly Loretta almost didn't notice it happening, the house began to feel like home. She sewed new clothes for the children from fabric Weston brought back from town without being asked. She organized the pantry, the linen closet, the workshop. She scrubbed floors until they gleamed, washed windows until they sparkled, mended every piece of torn clothing she could find. She cooked meals that made Weston close his eyes in appreciation, that put meat on her children's bones and color in their cheeks. And at night, after the children were asleep, she'd hear the piano downstairs, soft melodies that spoke of loneliness and longing, of beauty found in unexpected places. Sometimes she'd creep to the top of the stairs and listen, watching Weston's profile in the lamplight as his fingers moved over the keys. He never saw her there, or if he did, he never said anything. It became their unspoken ritual, him playing, her listening, neither acknowledging the intimacy of the moment. One evening, about a month after they'd arrived, Loretta came downstairs to find Weston at the piano as usual. But this time he looked up and saw her. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not intruding. Come sit if you want." She hesitated, then slowly walked into the parlor and sat on the settee near the piano. Weston's hands rested on the keys but didn't play. "I've been meaning to ask," he said. "Are you happy here? You and the children?" The question caught her off guard. "Happy?" "Content, at least. Comfortable. I know this arrangement is unusual, but I want to make sure it's working for you." Loretta considered her answer carefully. "The children are thriving. Caleb talks about the horses constantly. Molly's garden is already showing improvement. Eli actually laughs now, which he hadn't done since Thomas died. So yes, for them, this is working. And for you? I'm grateful. More grateful than I can express." "That's not what I asked." Weston turned on the piano bench to face her fully. "Gratitude isn't the same as happiness." "I don't know if I remember how to be happy," Loretta admitted quietly. "The last year it's been hard to feel anything but afraid." "And now?" "Now I'm less afraid. That's something. It's a start." Weston's expression was thoughtful. "I want you to know, Loretta, that this doesn't have to be temporary. If you want to stay, if the children want to stay, this is your home for as long as you need it." "You say that now, but nothing. I mean it." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his voice earnest. "I know what it's like to be alone. I know what it's like to come home to an empty house every night, to eat meals in silence, to have no one to talk to except the horses. Having you and the children here, it's changed things. Made this feel like a home again instead of just a place I sleep." Loretta's throat tightened. "We've disrupted your whole life." "You've improved my life. There's a difference." He smiled slightly. "I haven't eaten this well in years. The house has never been cleaner. And for the first time since my mother died, there's laughter here. Real, genuine laughter. That's worth more than you know." "The children adore you," Loretta said softly. "Caleb talks about you like you hung the moon. Molly made you a flower crown last week, but was too shy to give it to you. Eli asked me yesterday if you were going to be his new papa." Something flickered across Weston's face. Surprise, maybe, or longing. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that you're our friend, that you've been very kind to us. I didn't know what else to say." "Friend is good. Friend works." But there was something in his voice, something that suggested maybe friend wasn't quite enough. "Though I'll admit, if Molly made me a flower crown, I'd be honored to wear it." "Really?" "Really. Tell her to bring it to me tomorrow." "I'll wear it while I work." Loretta laughed despite herself, imagining this serious rancher wearing a crown of flowers while tending cattle. "You'll look ridiculous." "Probably. But Molly's feelings are more important than my dignity." He grinned. "Besides, the horses won't judge." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the lamplight warm around them. Then Weston turned back to the piano. "Do you still play?" he asked. "You said you used to." "Not in years. I'm sure I've forgotten everything." "Only one way to find out." He slid over on the bench, making room. "Come on, humor me." Loretta's heart hammered. Sitting that close to him, sharing the bench, felt dangerous somehow, intimate. But his expression was open, expectant, and she found herself standing and crossing to the piano before she could talk herself out of it. She sat carefully on the edge of the bench, leaving space between them. Her hands trembled as she lifted them to the keys. "I really don't remember much," she warned. "Doesn't matter. Just play something. Anything." She pressed a key tentatively, then another. Her fingers fumbled, searching for a melody she'd learned as a girl. It came back slowly, hesitantly, a simple piece her mother had taught her, sweet and uncomplicated. She made mistakes, hit wrong notes, but gradually the music began to flow. Beside her, Weston was perfectly still, listening. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That was beautiful," he said finally. "It was clumsy." "It was honest. That's better than perfect." Loretta looked down at the keys, at her work-roughened hands. When had she last done something just for the pleasure of it? When had she last made music instead of just surviving? Play with me, Weston said. I'll take the lower keys, you take the higher. We'll figure it out as we go. I don't know if I can. Try. That's all. Just try. So she did. He started a simple melody in the bass, and she joined him tentatively in the treble. They stumbled at first, searching for harmony, but gradually they found it. A simple duet that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. They played together in the quiet house while the children slept upstairs and the Kansas night pressed close against the windows. When they finally stopped, Loretta realized she was crying. Silent tears streaking down her face, her chest tight with emotion she couldn't name. Hey, Weston said softly. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She wiped at her face roughly. I haven't felt this normal in so long. Haven't done something just because it felt good. I'd forgotten what that was like. Then we'll do it more often. Music, I mean, if you want. I'd like that. She stood abruptly, needing distance, needing air. I should go, check on the children. Loretta, wait. Weston stood too, his expression serious. I need to tell you something. I should have told you before, but I wasn't sure how you'd take it. Her stomach clenched with sudden fear. Here it was, the other shoe dropping. What is it? The debt that put you on that auction block. The one attached to your husband. I paid it off completely. Loretta stared at him. What? The full $140. I paid it to the court 3 weeks ago. The debt is settled. You're free. Completely free. The room seemed to tilt. But you said there were $15 left, that you'd pay it as wages. I lied. Weston's voice was steady, but his eyes were apologetic. Well, not lied exactly. I didn't want you to feel like you owed me everything all at once. Thought it would be easier if you believed you were working off the difference. But the truth is, that debt is gone. Has been for weeks. You don't owe anyone anything. Loretta couldn't breathe. Free. The word meant nothing and everything. Why would you do that? Because you shouldn't have to spend the rest of your life paying for your husband's mistakes. Because those children deserve to grow up without that hanging over them. Because it was the right thing to do. That's over $100, Weston. That's money I can afford to spend, and I can't think of a better use for it. He took a step toward her, then stopped, as if unsure of his welcome. I know this changes things. I know you probably feel like you owe me now, but you don't. That money was a gift, freely given, no strings attached. No strings? Loretta's voice cracked. How can there be no strings? Nobody gives that kind of money for nothing. I'm not nobody, and it wasn't for nothing. It was for you, for your children, for the chance to help when I had the means to do so. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Damn it, Loretta, I'm doing this all wrong. I just wanted you to know that you're not trapped here. You can leave anytime you want. You're free to go, free to stay, free to choose your own path. That's what the money bought, your freedom, not your servitude. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Loretta felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. This man had bought her family, brought them home, fed them, clothed them, and now he was telling her she was free? It made no sense. It went against everything she'd learned about how the world worked. I don't understand you, she whispered. I know. I don't always understand myself. Weston's smile was sad. But I meant what I said that first day. Nobody should have their family torn apart, and nobody should spend their life in debt for the crime of surviving. You're free now, Loretta, truly free. What you do with that freedom is entirely up to you. Loretta's mind was reeling. Free meant she could leave, could take her children and walk away from this ranch, from this man, from this strange new life they'd built. Free meant choices. Free meant power. Free meant she had to decide what she really wanted. And the terrifying truth was, she didn't know. I need to think, she said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. She fled then, practically running up the stairs to her room where she could close the door and let herself fall apart in private. She sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Weston had freed her, completely. The debt that had hung over her head like an executioner's blade was gone. She could leave tomorrow if she wanted. could take her children to St. Louis, to Chicago, anywhere, could build a new life without the weight of the past crushing her. But where would they go? What would they do? She had $15 saved from her wages, enough to travel maybe, but then what? She'd be alone again, struggling again, fighting again. And her children, God, her children loved it here. Caleb talked about the horses in his sleep. Molly's garden was her pride and joy. Eli had stopped having nightmares, and if she was honest with herself, brutally honest, she loved it here too. Loved the work, loved the house, loved the rhythm of days spent caring for people who appreciated her. Loved hearing Weston play piano at night. Loved the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was something precious, something worth protecting. That was the most dangerous thought of all. She couldn't afford to feel anything for Weston beyond gratitude and respect. Couldn't afford to let her heart get tangled up in this arrangement. Because men changed, kindness turned to cruelty, and she'd already lost one husband to circumstances beyond her control. She couldn't risk her heart on another man who might leave or change or decide one day that he wanted something different, but Weston wasn't asking for her heart. He was just offering freedom. Wasn't he? Downstairs, the piano started again. That same melancholy melody he'd been playing for weeks. Loretta lay back on the bed and listened, tears streaming down her face, while the music wrapped around her like an embrace. She didn't know what to do, didn't know what she wanted, didn't know how to trust in good things anymore. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever happened next, whatever choices she made, her life had changed the moment Weston Hale stepped forward at that auction and said 4 simple words, "I'll take them all." Those words had saved her, had saved her children, had given them all a second chance at something resembling happiness. And now he was offering her freedom on top of it. The question was, what was she going to do with it? The music downstairs shifted, became something softer, sweeter. And Loretta closed her eyes and let herself drift, suspended between past and future, between fear and hope, between the woman she'd been and the woman she might become. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tomorrow would bring decisions. But tonight, she just listened to the music and let herself feel. Whatever that feeling was. Loretta didn't sleep that night. She lay in the darkness listening to the house settle around her, her mind spinning with Weston's revelation. Free. The word kept echoing in her head, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. She'd spent so long being trapped, first by poverty, then by debt, then by the auction block, that freedom felt like a foreign language she'd forgotten how to speak. When dawn finally broke, she rose with gritty eyes and an aching head. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a woman who looked haunted, desperate. She splashed cold water on her face and braided her hair with shaking hands, then went downstairs to do what she knew how to do, cook breakfast. Weston was already in the kitchen, starting the coffee. He looked up when she entered, his expression cautious. "Morning." "Morning." Loretta moved past him to the stove, needing the familiar ritual of cooking to steady herself. "I'll have breakfast ready in 30 minutes. Loretta, we should talk." "Not now, please." She couldn't look at him, couldn't face the kindness in his eyes when her own emotions were so raw. Let me cook." He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll be in the barn when you're ready." He left, and Loretta let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Her hands moved automatically through the familiar tasks, cracking eggs, slicing bacon, mixing biscuit dough. The repetition soothed her jangled nerves, gave her something to focus on besides the chaos in her head. The children came down one by one, sleepy and warm. Caleb noticed immediately that something was wrong. "Mama, are you sick?" "No, sweet boy, just didn't sleep well." "Are we in trouble?" Molly's voice was small, frightened. "Did we do something wrong?" "No, no." Loretta pulled her daughter close, hating that her children's first instinct was to assume they'd done something to deserve punishment. "You're perfect. Everything's fine." But Eli's thumb was back in his mouth, and Caleb's shoulders were tense, and Loretta realized her distress was bleeding into them like poison. She forced herself to smile, to breathe normally, to act as if nothing had changed. They ate breakfast together, just the 4 of them. Weston didn't return, giving her space she hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. The children chattered about their plans for the day. Caleb wanted to help groom all the horses. Molly had spotted some wildflower seeds she wanted to plant. Eli was determined to teach Smokey to play fetch with a stick. Normal things, child things, the kind of simple pleasures they'd been denied for so long. After breakfast, Loretta sent them outside to play and started on the dishes. She was scrubbing the last pan when she heard boots on the porch. Weston appeared in the doorway, hat in hand, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. "Can we talk now?" he asked quietly. Loretta dried her hands slowly, buying time. "I suppose we have to." "You don't have to do anything. That's the whole point." Weston came into the kitchen but kept his distance, leaning against the far counter. "But I'd like to know what you're thinking, what you're feeling." "I don't know what I'm feeling." The honesty surprised her. "I'm grateful, obviously, confused, frightened." "Frightened of what?" "Of this. Of you. Of what it means that you've done all this for us." She finally looked at him directly, needing to see his face. "Men don't give away that kind of money without wanting something in return. So what is it you want, Weston? What are you really after?" Pain flickered across his features. "I'm not after anything. I told you. You told me a lot of things. That you needed help. That this was employment. That there were no strings attached. But then you pay off my entire debt and tell me I'm free to leave whenever I want?" She heard her voice rising and fought to control it. "That doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense." "It makes perfect sense if you understand why I did it." "Then explain it to me. Make me understand." Weston was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "When my sister died, I couldn't do anything about it. I was 15 years old, working on a ranch in Colorado, and by the time I got the letter, she'd been in the ground for months. I couldn't save her, couldn't even say goodbye, and that destroyed something in me." His voice was rough with old grief. Loretta found herself moving closer despite her wariness. "I swore I'd never be that helpless again," he continued. "Worked myself half to death, saved every penny, bought this ranch when I was 22, built it into something real, something solid, but none of it meant anything because I was still alone, still haunted by the memory of a little girl I couldn't protect." "Weston, let me finish, please." He looked at her with those pale blue eyes that saw too much. "When I saw you on that platform with your children, when I heard them say they were going to separate you, I saw Sarah, I saw myself. I saw every person who's ever been powerless and broken by circumstances they couldn't control. And I had the means to do something about it, so I did. But the money is just money, Loretta. It can't bring Sarah back, it can't undo the past, but it can give your children a future. It can give you a choice, and that feels like something worth doing. The only thing worth doing, maybe." The raw sincerity in his voice made Loretta's eyes burn with tears. "You're either the best man I've ever met or the best liar." "I'm not a liar. I'm just a man who's been given a second chance to do the right thing when it matters." And what happens when you change your mind? When you decide this isn't what you want anymore? "I'm not going to change my mind." "You can't know that." Loretta's voice broke. "Thomas loved me too at first. Then he took on debts he couldn't repay and died and left us with nothing. He didn't mean to, but he did. People change. Circumstances change. Love isn't enough to protect against that." "I'm not talking about love." Weston's voice was gentle. "I'm talking about commitment, about doing what's right even when it's hard, about keeping promises." "What promises? You never promised me anything." "Didn't I?" He moved closer, not touching her, but near enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I promised you a home. I promised your children would stay together. I promised you fair wages and honest work. And I'm promising you now that those things won't change, regardless of what you decide to do." "How can you promise that?" "Because I'm not your husband, Loretta. I'm not asking you to put your faith in love or romance or any of the things that can fade and fail. I'm asking you to trust that I mean what I say. That when I make a commitment, I keep it." Loretta wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. "And if I want to leave, take my children and go, then I'll give you a horse, supplies, and enough money to get wherever you want to go, no questions asked. And if I want to stay?" Something shifted in his expression. Hope, maybe, carefully restrained. Then you stay. As my employee, my friend, whatever makes you comfortable. The terms don't change. You work, I pay you, we figure out how to make this arrangement work for everyone. That's all you want? Just an employee? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Weston's jaw tightened, and for a moment Loretta thought she saw something more in his eyes. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. What I want and what I'm asking for are two different things. I'm asking for you to stay and work for me. What I want, he trailed off, looking away. What I want doesn't matter right now. Right now you need stability and safety and the space to figure out what you want without pressure from me or anyone else. You're not going to answer the question. I'm trying to do the right thing here, Loretta, trying not to take advantage of the power imbalance between us. You came to me in desperate circumstances. I bought you out of an auction. You're dependent on me for food and shelter and your children's well-being. It wouldn't be right for me to complicate things with my own feelings. So you do have feelings. The words came out as a whisper. Weston's laugh was short and bitter. I'm not made of stone. You're a beautiful, intelligent, courageous woman who's been living in my house for over a month, cooking my meals and playing piano with me at night. Of course I have feelings, but that doesn't mean I'm going to act on them. Not when you're vulnerable. Not when you might feel obligated to reciprocate because you think you owe me. Loretta's heart was hammering now, her breath coming short. What if I don't feel obligated? What if I wanted to reciprocate? Do you? His eyes found hers, intense and searching. Or do you just think you should because I helped you? The question stopped her cold. Did she have feelings for Weston, or was it just gratitude wearing the mask of affection? Was the warmth she felt when he smiled at her children real attraction, or just relief at finding someone kind in a cruel world? I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what I feel anymore. Everything's so confused. Then we wait. Weston's voice was firm but gentle. We wait until you're sure. Until you know what you want without the weight of debt and desperation clouding your judgment. Can you do that? Wait for what? For clarity. For certainty. For you to be standing on solid ground again instead of quicksand. Loretta wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm kitchen. And if I'm never certain, if I never know what I feel, then we stay as we are. Employer and employee. Friends, maybe, if you're willing, but nothing more unless you choose it freely, with no obligation or pressure. It was the most frustrating and most honorable thing anyone had ever said to her. Loretta wanted to scream at him, to demand he make this simpler instead of more complicated. But she also wanted to throw her arms around him and thank him for being the kind of man who cared more about her well-being than his own desires. You're making this very difficult, she said finally. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry for being decent. God knows there are few enough decent men in the world. Your husband was decent, wasn't he? From what you've said. The change of subject caught her off guard. Thomas? Yes, he was decent. Kind, hardworking, loved his children. He made mistakes. Took on debts he thought he could manage. Trusted the wrong people. And then he died and left us to deal with the consequences. Do you still love him? The question was gentle but probing. Loretta had to think about her answer. I loved who he was. I grieve who he could have been. But love? She shook her head slowly. Love got buried somewhere under all the fear and anger and desperation. I don't know if I even remember what it felt like. That's honest, at least. Honest is all I have left. Loretta met his eyes. So here's more honesty. I don't know what I want. I don't know if I can trust my own feelings. I don't know if staying here is wisdom or cowardice. But I know my children are happy. I know I sleep better at night than I have in a year. I know that when I hear you play piano, something in me that I thought was dead starts to wake up. Is that enough? It's a start. Weston's smile was small but real. And Loretta? Thank you for being honest. That matters more than you know. The conversation ended there, both of them stepping back from the precipice of something neither was ready to name. Weston returned to his work, and Loretta threw herself into cleaning with almost manic energy, scrubbing floors that were already clean and organizing closets that didn't need organizing. The days continued to pass. Summer deepened into its full heat, and the ranch flourished under their combined care. Loretta cooked and cleaned and sewed. Weston worked the land and animals with patient expertise. The children grew brown and strong and happy in the Kansas sunshine. And every night, Weston played piano. Sometimes Loretta joined him, their fingers finding harmony on the keys. Sometimes she just listened from upstairs, letting the music wash over her like a benediction. They didn't speak of feelings again, didn't acknowledge the growing warmth between them. But it was there, undeniable, building like summer storm clouds on the horizon. One evening in late July, nearly 2 months after they'd arrived at Hale Ridge, Weston called Loretta out to the porch after the children were asleep. He had papers in his hand and an expression she couldn't read. "What's this?" she asked, settling into the rocking chair beside his. "The official papers from the court, confirming the debt is paid in full. I picked them up in town today." He held them out to her. "Thought you should have them. Proof that you're free." Loretta took the papers with shaking hands. There it was in black and white. Thomas Wynn's debt, $140, marked paid in full with an official stamp and signature. She traced the words with one finger, barely able to believe they were real. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. They're yours. Your freedom, documented and legal." Weston rocked slowly in his chair, his eyes on the prairie stretching dark and vast beyond the porch light. "But there's something else I need to tell you. Something I've been putting off because I wasn't sure how you'd react." Loretta's stomach clenched with sudden anxiety. "What is it?" "I'm not just paying you wages to work here. I've been putting money aside in an account in town. In your name." "What?" "Every month I've been depositing $25 into a savings account at the Lawrence Bank. It's yours, completely. To do with as you please." Loretta felt like the ground was shifting beneath her. "Weston, that's more than you said you'd pay me. I know what I said, but the truth is $15 a month isn't enough for the work you're doing, isn't enough for raising 3 children and running this entire household. So I've been putting the extra aside, and it's yours whether you stay or go." "How much?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "With interest? About $55 now. Will be more by the end of the year." $55. More money than Loretta had ever had at one time in her entire life. Money that was hers, free and clear, with no strings attached. "Why?" The question came out broken. "Why would you do this?" "Because you deserve security. Because your children deserve a future. Because if something happens to me, I want to know you'll be all right." He finally looked at her, his expression serious. "And because I want you to know that staying here is a choice, not a necessity. You have options now, Loretta, real options." "You're trying to make it easier for me to leave." "I'm trying to make sure you're only here if you want to be here. Not because you're trapped or desperate or feel like you owe me." Loretta's hands were shaking so hard the papers rattled. "I don't understand you at all." "I know." His smile was sad. "I'm not trying to be confusing. I'm just trying to do right by you. Even if that means making it easier for you to walk away." "What if I don't want to walk away?" The words escaped before she could stop them, raw and honest. "What if I've been terrified for weeks that you're going to realize this was all a mistake and send us away?" Weston's expression shifted, softened. "That's never going to happen." "You can't know that." "Yes, I can. Because sending you away would be like cutting off my own arm. You and those children you've become essential to this place, to me." "Weston, I'm not asking you for anything," he said quickly. "I'm just being honest. You asked me to tell you what I want, and I'm telling you. I want you to stay. I want to watch Caleb grow up learning about horses. I want to see Molly's garden flourish. I want to hear Eli's laugh every day. I want to come home to the smell of your cooking and the sound of your voice. I want to play piano with you at night and talk with you over coffee in the morning. I want all of it, all of you, for as long as you'll let me have it." Loretta's breath caught in her throat. "That sounds like more than employment." "Maybe it is. Maybe it's been more than employment since the day I saw you on that platform and knew I couldn't let them tear your family apart." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his voice low and intense. "But I'm not going to rush you. I'm not going to pressure you. You've been through hell, Loretta. You deserve time to heal, to find your footing, to figure out who you are when you're not just surviving. And what if I never figure it out? What if I'm too broken to be anything more than your employee? Then you're my employee, and I count myself lucky to have you. But, Loretta? He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused against hers. I don't think you're broken. I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. And whatever you decide, whatever you choose, I'll respect it. That's a promise. They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped, the night air warm around them. Fireflies danced in the darkness beyond the porch. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. I'm afraid, Loretta whispered finally. I'm so afraid of making the wrong choice, of trusting the wrong person, of ending up right back where I started. I know. Fear makes sense after everything you've been through. But Loretta, look at me. She did, meeting those pale blue eyes that had haunted her dreams for weeks. I'm not your husband. I'm not the men who put you on that auction block. I'm not going to leave you or betray you or put you in a position where you're vulnerable again. I'm going to be here, solid and steady, for as long as you need me. How can you promise that? Because I know who I am. I know what I want. And I know that losing you and those children would be worse than never having met you at all. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Loretta felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked away since Thomas died, maybe longer. I think... She paused, gathering courage. I think I might have feelings for you too, but I'm not ready to act on them. Not yet. Is that all right? That's more than all right. Weston squeezed her hand gently. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Even if it takes months, years, even then. That's not fair to you. Let me worry about what's fair to me. You just focus on healing and figuring out what you want. Loretta laughed despite the tears streaming down her face. You're the most frustrating man I've ever met. I'll take that as a compliment. They sat together on the porch for another hour, talking about small things and big things and everything in between. Weston told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to expand the herd and maybe buy the adjacent property. Loretta told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her mother's boarding house and the parade of travelers who'd passed through. They talked about the children, about Caleb's natural way with animals, and Molly's green thumb, and Eli's slowly emerging personality. And underneath it all, unspoken but present, was the growing understanding that they were building towards something. Not rushing it, not forcing it, but letting it develop naturally like Molly's garden. Slow growth, deep roots, patient tending. When Loretta finally went upstairs to bed that night, the official papers clutched in her hand and Weston's words echoing in her heart, she felt something she hadn't felt in over a year. Hope. Real, genuine, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them. That maybe there was a future here at Hale Ridge that included not just survival, but happiness. That maybe Weston Hale was exactly what he appeared to be, a good man trying to do right by people who needed help. She tucked the papers into her drawer like the precious documents they were, and went to check on her children. They were sprawled in their beds in the two smaller rooms, having finally grown comfortable enough to sleep separately. Caleb was snoring softly, one arm thrown over his head. Molly had kicked off her blankets despite the warm night. Eli slept curled around his wooden horse, thumb in his mouth. Her children, still hers, still together, still safe. Loretta kissed each of them gently and returned to her own room. Through the window, she could see the barn silhouetted against the starlit sky. Beyond it, the prairie stretched endlessly, full of possibility and promise. Somewhere downstairs, the piano started, Weston's nightly ritual. But tonight the melody was different. Not melancholy, but hopeful. Gentle notes that spoke of new beginnings and second chances. Loretta lay down and listened, letting the music wash over her. And for the first time since Thomas died, she let herself imagine a future that included more than just survival. She imagined waking up every morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of Weston's voice. She imagined watching her children grow strong and happy under his patient guidance. She imagined evenings on the porch and music in the parlor, and maybe, someday, the courage to admit that what she felt for Weston Hale went deeper than gratitude or respect. But that was for tomorrow, for next week. for whenever she was ready. Tonight, she just let herself feel safe. Let herself rest. Let herself believe that good things could happen to broken people if they were brave enough to accept them. The music continued, soft and sweet, as Loretta drifted towards sleep. And in that space between waking and dreaming, she could almost hear Sarah's voice, Weston's long-lost sister, whispering approval from wherever she'd gone. He was keeping his promise. He was doing the right thing. He was saving a family the way no one had saved his. And maybe, just maybe, he was saving himself in the process. The piano played on into the night, filling the house with hope and healing and the promise of tomorrow. And Loretta Wynn, widow and mother and survivor, finally let herself believe in second chances. The weeks that followed their conversation on the porch were different somehow, charged with a new kind of energy that Loretta couldn't quite name. Nothing had changed on the surface. She still cooked and cleaned, Weston still worked the ranch, the children still thrived in the Kansas sunshine. But underneath it all, something was shifting, growing, becoming real. Weston had given her freedom and security, and now Loretta was finally in a position to choose what came next. The weight of that choice pressed on her constantly, but it wasn't the suffocating pressure of desperation anymore. It was the kind of weight that came with possibility, with having options worth considering. She caught herself watching him more often now, the way he moved with quiet competence through his work, the gentle patience he showed Caleb when teaching him to saddle a horse, the genuine delight in his eyes when Molly presented him with flowers from her garden. He'd worn the flower crown she'd made him, just as he'd promised, working in the fields with daisies and black-eyed Susans woven around his hat. The ranch hands he'd hired for haying season had ribbed him mercilessly, but he just smiled and told them his gardener insisted on proper payment for her work. Loretta had watched from the kitchen window, her heart doing something complicated and terrifying in her chest. This man who'd saved them was also making it impossible not to love him. Love. There was that dangerous word again. One evening in early August, after the children had been sent to bed protesting they weren't tired, Loretta found Weston on the porch, as had become their habit. But instead of sitting in separate chairs, he gestured to the porch swing. "Join me?" She hesitated only a moment before settling beside him. The swing creaked gently as they set it in motion, the night air warm and sweet with the smell of Molly's honeysuckle. "I've been thinking," Weston said after a comfortable silence, "about the future, about what comes next." Loretta's heart jumped. "Oh? The ranch is doing well, better than it has in years, if I'm honest. Having help makes a difference. Having you makes a difference." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'd like to make some changes, expand a bit, maybe hire on another hand permanently, buy some more cattle, build the place up into something really substantial." "That sounds good. You've worked hard for it." "We've worked hard for it," he corrected gently. "This place wouldn't be half what it is without you and the children, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I want to make this arrangement more permanent, more official." Loretta's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want you to know this is your home for as long as you want it. Not as an employee, though I'll keep paying you wages if that's what you prefer, but as family." He turned to look at her, his expression earnest in the lamplight. "I know it's too soon for anything more. I know you need time, but I want you to know my intentions, Loretta. I want to build a future here, and I want you and the children to be part of it." "Weston, let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "I've been alone a long time. Told myself I was fine with it, that I didn't need anyone else. But having you here has shown me what I was missing. Not just someone to cook and clean. I could hire someone for that. But someone to talk to at the end of the day. Someone who understands the value of hard work and honest living. Someone who makes this house feel like a home, instead of just a building I sleep in." Loretta felt tears pricking at her eyes. "You're making this very hard." "Hard how?" "Hard to keep my walls up, hard to protect myself, hard to remember all the reasons I should be cautious." "Maybe you don't need to be cautious anymore." Weston's voice was soft. "Maybe you've been through enough that you've earned the right to just be happy." "I don't know if I remember how." "Then maybe we could figure it out together." The swing creaked gently as they rocked. Somewhere in the barn, a horse nickered softly. The stars overhead were brilliant, unburdened by city lights. My children love you, Loretta said quietly. Caleb talks about you constantly. Molly made you another flower crown yesterday. Did you know that? She's too shy to give it to you, but she made it. And Eli, she smiled through her tears. Eli asked me again yesterday if you were going to be his papa. What did you tell him this time? I told him that you care about us very much, that you're our friend and our protector, that he's lucky to have you in his life. She turned to face Weston fully. But I didn't answer the question he was really asking, which was whether you're going to stay, whether this is forever, whether he can let himself love you without being afraid you'll disappear like his father did. Weston's jaw tightened. I'm not going anywhere, Loretta, not by choice. I can't promise I'll never die. None of us can. But I can promise that as long as I'm breathing, I'll be here. For you, for them, for all of us. How can you be so certain? Because I know what it's like to lose people I love. I know what it's like to be powerless to protect them. And I've spent every day since Sarah died making sure I'm never in that position again. This ranch, this life, it's built on stability and planning and making sure I have the means to weather any storm. He reached out and took her hand, the gesture familiar now, comforting. I'm not your husband, Loretta. I'm not going to take foolish risks or leave you vulnerable. That's not who I am. Thomas didn't mean to leave us vulnerable. He just made mistakes. I know, and I'm not saying I'm perfect or that I'll never make mistakes, but I'm saying I'll be here to fix them. I'll be here to face the consequences alongside you instead of leaving you to deal with them alone. Loretta looked down at their joined hands, his work roughened and strong, hers smaller, but no less capable. I'm terrified, she whispered. Of what? Of believing this is real. Of trusting that good things can happen. Of letting myself love you and then losing you too. Love? Weston's voice was gentle, questioning. Don't pretend you didn't hear it. I'm not taking it back. Loretta lifted her eyes to his, feeling naked and brave all at once. I think I've been falling in love with you since the first night you played piano. Maybe even before that. Maybe since the moment you stepped up at that auction and refused to let them break us apart. Loretta, but I'm still terrified because love didn't protect me before. Love didn't save Thomas or keep us safe or prevent everything from falling apart. So how can I trust it now? Weston was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. You can't. You can't trust love alone because you're right. It's not enough. But you can trust commitment. You can trust action. You can trust that when I say I'll be here, I mean it with everything I am. He shifted to face her fully, his other hand coming up to cup her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. I love you, Loretta. I've loved you for weeks now, maybe longer. But more than that, I choose you. I choose this life with you and your children. I choose to build something lasting and strong and real. And I'll keep choosing it every single day for the rest of my life if you'll let me. Loretta couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare into those pale blue eyes and see nothing but truth looking back at her. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to trust again. Then we'll figure it out together, one day at a time, one choice at a time. His hand was warm against her cheek, his touch reverent. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. I'm not asking you to make any promises you're not ready to make. I'm just asking you to stay, to let me court you properly, to give us a chance to build something real. Court me? Despite everything, Loretta felt a smile tugging at her lips. That's very old-fashioned of you. I'm an old-fashioned man. Weston's answering smile was small but genuine. Which means I'm going to do this right. No pressure, no rushing, just honest intentions and time to let things grow naturally. The children will be involved every step of the way. Nothing happens without them knowing and approving. They're part of this too. Loretta felt something in her chest loosen, that tight knot of fear and control finally beginning to unravel. You've thought about this a lot, haven't you? Every day since you got here. Every night when I'm playing piano and hoping you're listening. Every morning when I smell your coffee and remember what it's like to not be alone. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. I want this, Loretta. I want all of it, but only if you want it too. I do, she breathed. God help me, I do. I'm just so scared. I know, but we'll face the fear together. That's what families do. Family. The words settled around them like a blessing. They sat together on the swing for another hour, talking and planning and dreaming. Weston painted a picture of the future, expanding the ranch, building on another room for the growing children, maybe even a small schoolhouse where other local children could come learn. Loretta added her own dreams. A larger garden, teaching Molly to sew, watching Caleb grow into the kind of man who treated animals and people with equal respect. When Loretta finally went inside, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. She checked on the children as always, finding them deeply asleep, then paused at Caleb's bedside. "Your papa would be proud of you," she whispered, smoothing his hair back. "And I think he'd be glad we found Weston. He'd want us to be happy, to be safe." She said the same at Molly's bed and then Eli's, speaking to Thomas as much as to the children, giving herself permission to move forward, to build a new life, to love again without guilt. The next morning, Weston approached Caleb in the barn where the boy was grooming Daisy. "Can I talk to you about something important?" Weston asked, settling onto a hay bale. Caleb looked up, suddenly serious. "Am I in trouble?" "No, nothing like that. I just wanted to ask you something man to man." The phrase made Caleb stand a little straighter. "Okay. You know I care about you and your sisters and your mama very much, right?" "Yes, sir." "And you know I'd never do anything to hurt any of you?" "Yes, sir," Caleb repeated, though his eyes were wary now. "What's this about?" "I'd like to court your mother, to spend time with her with the intention of maybe, someday, marrying her and becoming a real family. But I wanted to ask you first if that would be all right with you." Caleb was quiet for a long moment, the brush stilling in his hand. "Would you be our papa then?" "If you wanted me to be. If you'd have me." "What about our real papa, the one who died?" Weston chose his words carefully. "He'll always be your real papa, Caleb. Nothing can change that. I'd never try to replace him or make you forget him. But I'd like to be another father to you if you'll let me. Someone who can teach you things and take care of you and be there when you need help." "Like you already do?" "Yes, but more official, more permanent." Caleb started brushing again, thinking. "Mama's been happier since we came here. She doesn't cry at night anymore. She used to cry. All the time. After Papa died. She thought we didn't know, but we did." Caleb's voice was small. "Molly used to cry too, and Eli had bad dreams, but not anymore. Not here. I'm glad." Weston's throat was tight. "If you married Mama, would we stay here forever? You wouldn't sell us again?" The question hit Weston like a physical blow. "Caleb, look at me." He waited until the boy met his eyes. "I will never, ever sell you or your sisters or your mother. You're not property. You're people I care about. And yes, if your mama and I got married, you'd stay here forever. This would be your home, truly and completely. Promise?" "I promise. On my honor, on my life, I promise." Caleb nodded slowly. "Then I think it's okay. If Mama wants to marry you, I mean, I think Papa would say it was okay too. He'd want us to be safe." Weston had to swallow hard against the emotion rising in his throat. "Thank you, Caleb. That means more than you know. Can I still call you Weston, or would I have to call you Papa?" "You can call me whatever feels right to you. Weston, Papa, anything in between. There's no rules about it." "Okay." Caleb went back to brushing Daisy, then paused. "Weston, thank you for buying us that day, for keeping us together. Mama says you saved us. You saved yourselves by surviving long enough for me to find you. I just helped a little. You helped a lot." That evening, Weston had similar conversations with Molly and Eli, adjusted for their ages and understanding. Molly was shyly enthusiastic, immediately planning what flowers she'd carry at a wedding. Eli just wanted to know if Weston being their papa meant he'd tell them bedtime stories, which Weston promised to do whether they got married or not. The courting that followed was gentle and sweet. Weston brought Loretta wildflowers from the prairie, made excuses to ride into town so he could bring back small gifts: ribbon for Molly's hair, a new pocket knife for Caleb, candy sticks for Eli. He asked Loretta to accompany him on evening walks, always with the children nearby, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. They played piano together almost every night now, their duets growing more confident and complex. Sometimes Weston would sing, a low, surprisingly rich baritone that made Loretta's heart flutter. Sometimes she'd join in, her voice rusty from disuse but slowly finding its strength again. The ranch continued to thrive. Weston hired Jacob, a young hand from town, to help with the day-to-day work. Loretta's garden expanded with Molly's help until it was producing more vegetables than they could eat, allowing them to sell the surplus in town. Caleb learned to ride properly, to rope, to handle cattle with growing confidence. Eli started losing his shyness, chattering constantly about the cats and the chickens and everything he learned each day. As summer faded into autumn, painting the prairie in golds and crimsons, Loretta felt the last of her walls crumbling. She loved Weston, there was no denying it anymore. Loved the way he was patient with her children, loved the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, loved the future he was building for all of them. One crisp October evening, after the first frost had touched the garden and the children were asleep upstairs, Weston took Loretta's hand on the porch. "I have something for you," he said quietly. "Another gift? Weston, you've already given us so much. This is different." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Loretta's breath caught. "Before you panic, just listen. I'm not asking you to answer tonight. I'm not asking you to feel pressured. I just want you to have this and think about it." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band, delicate and beautiful in its plainness. Loretta felt tears spring to her eyes. "It was my mother's," Weston explained. "The only piece of her jewelry my father didn't sell. I've been saving it for someone special." He looked at her with those pale blue eyes that had become so dear to her. "Loretta Wynne, I love you. I love your children as if they were my own. I love the life we've built here together, and I would be honored, so deeply honored, if you would consider becoming my wife." "Weston, you don't have to answer now," he said quickly. "Take your time, think about it, pray about it if that helps. I'll wait as long as you need, but I wanted you to know that this is what I want. A real marriage, a real family, a real forever." Loretta looked at the ring, then at Weston's face, then back at the ring. 6 months ago, she'd been standing on an auction block believing her life was over. Now she was being offered not just survival, but happiness. Not just security, but love. "Ask me again," she whispered. "What?" "Ask me again. Properly." Understanding dawned in Weston's eyes. Slowly, with a smile spreading across his face, he got down on one knee. The porch boards creaked under his weight, solid and real. "Loretta Wynne, will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband and a father to your children? Will you build a life with me here at Hale Ridge for as long as we both shall live?" Loretta looked at this man who'd saved her family, who'd given them a home, who'd waited patiently for her to heal enough to love again. She thought about Thomas, about the life they'd had and lost. She thought about her children sleeping peacefully upstairs. She thought about the future stretching before her, full of possibility and promise. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and sure. 1,000 times yes. Weston stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest while she cried tears of joy and relief and overwhelming gratitude. He was solid and warm and real, and he was choosing her, choosing them, choosing this life together. "I love you," she whispered against his shoulder. "I love you so much it scares me." "I love you too, and I promise you, Loretta, I'm going to spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never regret this choice." He pulled back just enough to slip the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand. They stood together on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, while the Kansas stars wheeled overhead and the prairie wind whispered promises of tomorrow. Inside the house, the children slept safely. In the barn, the horses rested quietly. Everything was peaceful. Everything was right. "When?" Loretta asked eventually. "Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next month, next year. I'm not in a hurry. Before winter. I want to start our life together before the snow comes." Then before winter it is. Weston kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips in a gentle kiss that held promise of all the years to come. We'll need to go to town, make it legal, maybe have a small ceremony if you want. Nothing big, just us and the children and maybe a few neighbors as witnesses. Perfect. They made plans late into the night, dreaming together about their future. A winter wedding, simple but meaningful. The children standing with them, part of the ceremony. A celebration after, with the few friends they'd made in the area. And then a life together, building the ranch, raising the children, growing old together under the vast Kansas sky. When they finally parted to go to their separate rooms, propriety maintained even in their engagement, Loretta felt like she was floating. She checked on the children one more time, the ring heavy and wonderful on her finger. "We're getting married," she whispered to their sleeping forms. "Weston and I are getting married. You're getting a father again, a real father who chose you, who wants you, who will never leave." She went to her own room and lay awake for a long time, watching the ring catch moonlight, hardly believing this was her life now. Downstairs, the piano stayed silent for once. Weston was probably as sleepless as she was, probably lying awake thinking about the future too. Tomorrow they'd tell the children. Tomorrow they'd start planning the wedding. Tomorrow their new life would truly begin. But tonight, Loretta just let herself feel happy. Purely, completely, unreservedly happy in a way she'd thought she'd never feel again. The wedding took place on a crisp November morning, 6 weeks later. True to their wishes, it was small and simple. Just Loretta and Weston, the 3 children, and a handful of neighbors from the surrounding farms. The circuit preacher happened to be passing through, which everyone took as a good omen. Molly had insisted on decorating, weaving autumn leaves and late-blooming flowers through the porch railings until the whole house looked festive. Caleb stood beside Weston, solemn and proud in his new shirt, while Molly clutched dried flowers in her small hands. Eli's job was to deliver the rings, which he did with careful concentration, his tongue poking out as he handed the matching gold bands to the preacher. Loretta wore a simple dress of soft blue, not white, she was a widow after all. But Weston's eyes when he saw her said she could have been wearing sackcloth and still been the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, Caleb's voice rang out clear and strong. "I don't object. I think it's good. Weston's going to be a good papa." Laughter rippled through the small gathering, and even the preacher smiled. "I don't think that's quite what the question meant, son, but I appreciate the sentiment." When it came time for the vows, Weston surprised everyone by adding his own words after the traditional ones. "I promise to honor Thomas's memory by caring for his children as he would have wanted. I promise to be patient and kind and steady. I promise to build a home where love matters more than money and family matters more than anything else. And I promise to choose you, Loretta, every single day for the rest of my life." Loretta's own additions were simpler but no less meaningful. "I promise to trust you, to build a future with you, to let myself love again without fear. And I promise to remind you every day how grateful I am that you said those 4 words that changed everything." "What words?" the preacher asked, curious. "I'll take them all," Weston and Loretta said together, smiling at the shared memory. The kiss that sealed their marriage was gentle and sweet and full of promise. The children cheered, the neighbors applauded. And Loretta Hale, no longer Wynne, felt like she'd finally come home. The celebration afterward was simple, food and music and laughter. Weston played piano while various neighbors fiddled or sang. The children ran around with other farm kids, already settling into their new life with the ease of the young. Loretta found herself surrounded by neighbor women offering advice and friendship, welcoming her officially into their community. As the sun began to set and guests started departing for their own homes, Loretta stood on the porch watching her children play. Weston came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he murmured against her hair. "Happier than I thought possible." "Good. That's all I want. Your happiness and the children's." "We have something to tell you," Caleb announced, running up with his siblings. "We talked about it, and we decided." "Decided what?" Weston asked. "We want to call you Papa now, if that's okay." Caleb looked between Weston and Loretta. "Our other Papa will always be our Papa in heaven, But you're our papa here. Weston's eyes filled with tears. He knelt down so he was eye level with all three children. I would be honored, so deeply honored, thank you. Eli threw his arms around Weston's neck. Papa. Yes, son? Will you tell us a bedtime story tonight, since it's a special day? Absolutely, all the stories you want. And tomorrow can we work with the horses? Caleb asked. Tomorrow and every day after that. And my garden, Molly added. Will you still help me with it? Always, sweetheart, always. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. The children adapted to calling Weston Papa with surprising ease, their love for him overriding any awkwardness. Loretta and Weston navigated the early days of marriage with patience and humor, learning each other's habits and quirks, building intimacy, both emotional and physical, at a pace that felt right for both of them. The ranch continued to prosper. With Jacob's help and Caleb's growing skills, they were able to expand the herd significantly. Loretta's cooking became locally famous, with neighbors finding excuses to stop by around mealtimes. Molly's garden became a source of pride and profit, her careful tending producing vegetables and herbs that sold well in town. Winter came, blanketing the prairie in snow, but the house was warm and full of life. Weston taught the children to read music, all of them crowding around the piano on long evenings. They played games, told stories, built snowmen, and learned what it meant to be a family not by blood, but by choice. Spring arrived with a surprise. Loretta discovered she was pregnant. The news filled the house with joy and a little bit of chaos as the children argued over whether they wanted a brother or sister. Weston was quietly ecstatic, already planning additions to the house to make room for their growing family. Are you scared? He asked Loretta one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. A little, she admitted. Childbirth is always frightening, but mostly I'm happy. This baby will be born into love and security, not desperation and debt. That makes all the difference. I'll take care of you, both of you. I know, that's why I'm not more scared. The baby, actually babies, twins boys, arrived in late autumn, almost exactly a year after the wedding. The birth was hard, but Loretta came through it strong and healthy. Weston, who'd been pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door while the midwife attended his wife, nearly wept when he first held his sons. James and Samuel, Loretta said, naming them after Weston's father and her own. Our new beginning. Caleb, Molly, and Eli fell in love with their baby brothers immediately. Caleb appointed himself their protector. Molly insisted on helping with every feeding and diaper change. Eli, no longer the baby himself, took his role as big brother very seriously. The house that had been empty and silent for so long now rang with children's laughter, babies' cries, and the sounds of a life fully lived. Weston's piano music changed too, less melancholy now, more joyful, reflecting the happiness that filled every corner of Hale Ridge. 2 years after the wedding, on a summer evening much like the one when everything had changed, Loretta stood on the porch watching her family. Caleb was in the corral with Weston, both of them working with a new colt. Molly was in her garden, teaching Eli how to properly water the herbs. The twins were napping inside, their soft breathing audible through the open window. Loretta thought back to that terrible day on the auction platform, the fear, the desperation, the absolute certainty that her world was ending. She thought about the moment Weston had stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos with 4 simple words that had changed everything. I'll take them all. Those words hadn't just saved them. They'd given them a future, given them a home, given them love and security and the chance to be happy again. Weston caught her eye from the corral and smiled, that private smile that was just for her. She smiled back, her heart full to overflowing. Inside the house, one of the twins started fussing. Loretta turned to go to him, but Weston was already vaulting the fence, heading inside to tend to his son. She watched through the window as he lifted the baby with capable hands, swaying gently and murmuring soft words until the crying stopped. This was her life now. This beautiful, impossible, miraculous life that she'd never dared dream of during those dark months of widowhood and desperation. That night, after the children were all asleep and the twins were settled in their cradle, Loretta and Weston sat together at the piano as they'd done so many nights before. Their fingers found the keys together, creating music that spoke of journey and arrival, of loss and finding, of all the ways broken things could heal if given love and time. Happy? Weston asked, the question he'd asked so many times before. Happier than I ever thought possible, Loretta answered, the same response she always gave, but with deeper truth each time. Thank you for choosing us that day, for seeing us, and deciding we were worth saving. You were always worth saving, Loretta. I just recognized what was already true. He kissed her temple gently. And you saved me too, you know. This house was just a building before you came. You turned it into a home. They played together in the lamplight while the Kansas night pressed close around them, the music wrapping around the house like a blessing. Upstairs, 5 children slept safely, 3 by Thomas, 2 by Weston, all of them loved equally and completely. Loretta never forgot the auction block, never forgot the fear and helplessness of that terrible day, but she also never forgot the moment hope returned in the form of a quiet cowboy who refused to let a family be torn apart. That choice, Weston's choice to step forward when he could have stayed silent, had changed everything. It had saved 4 lives and eventually created 2 more. It had taken people who were broken and given them the space and love to heal. It had proven that sometimes, in this hard and cruel world, there were still good people willing to do the right thing, even when it cost them something. The music continued, soft and sweet, as Loretta leaned against her husband's shoulder. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The ranch work never ended. The children would need tending. Life would continue with all its joys and difficulties. But tonight, in this perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. A family chosen not by blood, but by love. A home built not on obligation, but on genuine care. A future not guaranteed, but fought for, and earned and protected with everything they had. Loretta closed her eyes and let the music wash over her, Weston's steady presence beside her an anchor and a promise. They'd survived the worst and found their way to the best. And that, she thought, was worth every hardship that had come before. The piano played on, filling the house with hope and healing, and the absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be, home, safe, together, loved, forever.